What's going on, everyone? This is Sheets, and I'm going to be going over UFC Fight Night, Delize versus Hernandez, for this Saturday. And after a little bit of variance with respect to getting these fights in order and replacement fighters and all this stuff, they do have a 12-fight card. So it's pretty viable from a GPP perspective. The other thing to note is that there's a notable absence of closely lined fights. You only have two fights where the favorite is less than 2-1 odds, and that would be Lucindo Hill and Brundage McConaughey. And that makes pricing sort of interesting. Normally, you will have, several, mid-range priced fights, and you certainly have them here. But typically, when you have a mid-range fight, you have fighters with semi-equal chances to win. And with the exception of those two fights that I've mentioned, you have guys that are like 2-3 to 1 and girls 2-3 to 1 that are priced, 84, 85, 8,600. So you're going to get some pretty decent, theoretical, right, money line value in those types of fights. In addition to that, when you only have two fights where the favorite is less than 2-1, it brings up a different dynamic. It brings up, number one, the fact that underdogs are at a premium. In other words, it's not like your 14-fight card where getting an underdog isn't good enough. In these 14-fight cards, you not only need an underdog, but you need underdogs that are going to score through the roof. Where when you have a card like this, where it's very difficult to find anybody that's going to win anyway, it's not as crucial to find these big underdogs with big upside. Now, obviously, we prefer that, but it's not as critical. And the other thing to throw into the mix, and that's going to become important when we go through one of these fights, is you have to consider for these underdogs what their score might look like in a loss, because that happens more frequently than you might imagine, where the optimal lineup involves having a fighter that loses but just scores enough to make the entire lineup score enough points to become optimal. So you have to consider not just the chances to win of these underdogs, but also what these underdogs look like even in losses. And that doesn't happen every week, but I think this week is pretty relevant. So I guess let's just get moving from the bottom of the card up. And right off the bat, we have Cody Brundage versus Eric McConaughey, which was a fight that was only recently put together. And we have, unfortunately, a pricing problem here in that Cody Brundage and McConaughey, it's 8,200 8K. But DraftKings really didn't do a great job with that. They could have waited another day or so for this line to kind of settle in, because Brundage is now like a 170-ish favorite. So to put him at 8,200, it's really, really nasty. Okay, it makes him an extraordinarily good play. Now, again, if it's not like there are other $8,300, $8,400 fighters that are great plays, really. That are bad plays, really, because there's a lot of these like 2-1 favorites that are 85, 8,600. But nonetheless, if you're minus 170 at 8,200, that's rough business. Okay, that's a very, very difficult fade. Not to mention the fact that even though we don't have an inside the distance line yet, all of Cody Brundage's fights are action. And in his wins, I mean, without even looking, I know that he scores well in his wins. But forget when he when he got the win by over Malkoun by DQ. Forget that. Even in his actual wins, it's like first round KOs. He's a really big time scorer, and he's very, very aggressive. So this right off the bat is an extraordinarily strong play. Now, when we get into GPP speak and lineup construction and things like that, it will be difficult to deny that McConaughey on the other side of this carries quite a bit of leverage, because whenever you have a fighter whose metrics and whose numbers look that great and is going to be that highly owned, I imagine Brundage is going to be very highly owned, then you have to consider the opponent. If the opponent looks decent. Now, again, I don't know what McConaughey's inside the distance line looks like yet, But again, I have to think about, that Brundage's fights are all action. Now, you'll hear some narrative along the way that Brundage tends to get out of fights when things are not going his way. A lot of no contest, relative to the average in his fights. So if you do play Meconico, you are taking some kind of a risk that he could be winning the fight, and Brundage could end up like pulling some funny business, uh, and maybe somehow try to get a no contest out of this somehow. But nonetheless, both sides of this fight are going to be extraordinarily relevant for DFS. And right off the bat, you're going to want both sides of this. All right. Fernandez versus Stoliarenko. See, this is something that you're going to see on very few cards. Like these 87, $8,800 fighters were such big money line favorites. So Gabriela Fernandez minus 400 at 8,700 is pretty obscene. But that's just a function of the card. I mean, all DraftKings does really is rank the fighters based on their win odds and price them accordingly. So there are fighters that are more likely to win than Gabriela Fernandez. But again, this is a lineup game. So the less you can spend for these minus 300-400s, the better. So she looks really, really strong here as far as money line goes. As far as the inside the distance line, she's, what is she, minus 140 inside, and that's extraordinarily strong for this salary. So I really have no problem with her, and this is what you're going to see throughout this card is, I mean, you're not going to have too much of a difference between an $8,800 fighter maybe and a $9,500 fighter or whatever. So there's no real reason, I think, to spend the extra 800. So Fernandez at minus 160. I mean, let's talk. We'll talk about some 93, 94s, whatever, some more expensive fighters that really don't have that much better of an inside the distance line. So why not play Fernandez? So she looks very strong. Stoliarenko, unfortunately, again, she just doesn't win often enough. And this is going to be the theme of this card is how to play these underdogs in these minus 400 fights. So unfortunately, she doesn't have great win odds, and also unfortunately, she's not going to look that good in a loss. Because it's not as though she gets a lot of takedowns or puts up a lot of volume. She really is just submission or bust. So in her losses, they're just not going to score. So I think that Stoliarenko is probably pretty much a full fade here. Okay, so now we get into this interesting fight. I mean, I don't know why I'm so, I don't say confident in this, but you have Uros Medic against Gilbert Urbina, and I have to say, okay, I'm not supposed to put my takes on this or whatever it is, but I just want to just kind of go over something. So Uros Medic, I remember this like it was yesterday, right? On July 29, 2023, he was fighting Matthew Semmelsberger, and he was off, a year and a half, something like that, and he was not the favorite. And all we were hearing the whole week was that the Alaska fight scene is terrible. Like everybody from Alaska is awful. Uros Medic is just really, really bad. And Semmelsberger was going to take all this steam, and Medic has just atrocious takedown defense. Okay. And that's what Semmelsberger was going to win. And Semmelsberger was doing very, very well in that fight. And then Medic just got him in the third round, got him a KO. And it turns out Semmelsberger's chin is pretty bad. So whatever. And then in his next fight, he got completely owned by Uralbide, had no answers for any of the takedown defense, right? So then he came back against Tim Means, got a first round knockdown and took him out. And then in his last fight, he literally got two significant strikes in before losing in the first round to kind of an older Soriano, okay? So, I mean, who died and said Uros Medic was any good? You know what I mean? He was coming in after that year and a half, just kind of almost like a fraud. And he had a couple of, he had one. I wonder what happens if he loses this Semmelsberger fight, for example, which he very well could have done. But the thing that's not annoying, the thing that's telling is that he has no takedown defense, at all. And the Uralbide fight was a good example of that. And this is kind of what he's known for. And he's fighting Gilbert Urbina, and Gilbert Urbina, this is what he's going to want to do in this fight. He's going he's going to go for takedowns. That's just the way it is. He in the 3 fights that I saw, he had 2 takedowns against Brian Battle, who's obviously very good. He lost to him. Then he was off 2 years. He came back as one of the really, really popular underdogs on that card. I remember that. That was one of the qualifiers for the live final. And he took all this money, and I think he ended up going off the favorite, and he destroyed it. There were 2 takedowns, a knockdown, just murdered him. And then he came back and got caught in the first round. Okay, he had no answers for Radkin. So here's the thing. I mean, Urbina's path to victory is going to be pressuring and getting takedowns. Is he going to get them? I don't know, but it's certainly a good style matchup for him. You know what I mean? So I don't know. So I think that he's very, very live to get the win. But not only that, even if he doesn't get the win, he could get a couple of takedowns on Medic, even in a loss. If he gets like a second round, gets even knocked out in the second round, it could be after getting 3 or 4 takedowns before that. And I think that on a card like this, you really have to consider those variations. So I think Urbina is a very, very strong, one of the stronger of the punts this week. We'll get to a couple of more. I mean, one's going to be kind of obvious, but I think Urbina is very, very live in GPPs here. As far as Medic goes, I mean, sure. You know what I mean? Like he's only, what did I say? I mean, he's only 8,900. I presume his inside the distance line is really strong. We'll take a look at it. It's got to be like -150, right? Or even better, -300. So this is this is an extremely strong favorite. Okay. I mean, you don't even see that too often. So what you do is you just play both sides of this. Okay. So you play Medic, you play Urbina, and I wouldn't stack it or anything like that, but maybe go market weight, maybe I don't know, 80, maybe 75% Medic, 25% Urbina, maybe. Okay. But I still think you're supposed to have a decent amount of Urbina on this card. The combination of the style matchup favoring him, I think it really favors him. In that, if he can get the wrestling going, he's got a huge edge. Will he get it going? Who knows? But even if he gets it going and loses, I think he's lost. So do you like Urbina? And obviously manage at -300. It's first of all, it's going to be really popular at these metrics, which also makes Urbina even a better play. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts. Okay, Priscilla Cachoeira versus Jocelyn Edwards. And again, I hate to say this, but the first 3 fights, I mean, well, Fernandez not so much, but 3 of the first 4 fights, I think can really determine the whole slate. I mean, Jocelyn Edwards, Priscilla Cachoeira, this is DFS gold as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you have like a perfect matchup here for somebody putting up a big number, okay? Because you have Priscilla Cachoeira, who just is a huge, big time brawler and big time knockout artist and big time just terrible grappler. And Jocelyn Edwards has really started to develop her grappling game. So if she has any IQ at all, for any fight IQ at all, she'll be going for the takedowns. And Priscilla Cachoeira gives up a ton of fantasy points to people that take her down. So this is totally binary. Like Cachoeira, she has incredible knockout upside in this fight at only what, 7,600? And Jocelyn Edwards, if she doesn't get knocked out, she could get like what, 6 takedowns, control time, submissions. Now I think that both sides of this fight are just extremely strong. So, I mean, if you're watching this card, I think that a lot of your, I mean, if you're doing it right, I think a lot of your results are going to be determined by these first 4 fights. Okay. I think that the Brundage McConaughey fight, you sort of almost have to play. I think the Urbina Medic fight, it's not going to be as highly owned maybe as some others, maybe obviously the Medic side. I think you have to play that one. And I think you have to play the Cachoeira Edwards fight. And not to bury the lead here, but you played 3 of those 3 fights plus the main event. I think you're really, you're off to the races. Okay. All right. Now I know people are saying, "Oh, that's it. I'm gonna turn off their recording now." But now there's other stuff to get to, but I think that's really the key. All right. Elijah Smith versus Kazama. And Kazama, he did get a kind of a nice miracle sub in his last fight. But let's take a look at some of these odds. So Elijah Smith, inside the distance, I imagine it's going to be pretty big. Minus 240 inside the distance. Okay. So minus 240 inside the distance, and his price is 9,300. So you have Medic is just has a better inside the distance line and less salary. So he's just going to be a better play. And when you have this underdog issue, it's not where you just have to just go, just pay up for these guys. Every dollar counts here. So I think Smith is fine, but I think you're going to really appreciate having that money saved. So I think Medic is a better play than Smith, but I think obviously Smith with that inside the distance line is going to be in play. I wish he had more takedown upside, but I think Elijah Smith, if he's smart, he's just going to try to keep his feet on the feet and just destroy Kazama. Kazama as a punt, I mean, I don't know, he came into the UFC with some hype. He got KO'd by Nakamura in his debut. Then he got just KO'd round one here. Then he was getting just blitzed by Gregorio, and then he came back with kind of a miracle submission. I don't know. If I get to him in 150 just because the Sims get me there, okay. But aside from that, I don't know. He just doesn't win the fight often enough. It's probably not going to look great in a loss because I don't think he's going to get takedowns here. I don't know what he's going to do actually. So, I don't know. Can he get takedowns? I mean, he has all these submissions. Maybe he can try for takedowns. I think it's very speculative to say the least. All right, Julius Walker versus Rafael Cachoeira. He's gonna probably win in the first round, right? Let's see, Julius Walker inside the distance minus 300. Yikes. Round one is probably even money. Yeah, so he's minus 110. So yeah, I mean, great play. 9,400. So if you play him, you're gonna have to get Urbina right. You're gonna have to get Cachoeira right. Or maybe, if you play Delete, say in the main event, you have to get that one right. So that's the thing with 9,400, it's going to be very difficult. But I mean, you could do it. Look, Brundage. Let's see. I mean, we have a lot of money to spend even right here. So you can almost get to him even a lineup like this, which actually you can't play Urbina and Medic together, right? So let's say you played Urbina and then you played up to Walker like this. Yeah, I mean, you could do this. You are going to have to get, a couple of underdogs, and this mid-range fight is going to be really big. I mean, everybody's going to have to play this. Okay. So Eric Anders versus Christian Leroy Duncan. All right. Christian Leroy Duncan has really big win odds at minus 450. But if you look at his inside the distance line, it's going to be very weak. It's like plus 170. Now, again, remember, we're comparing that to some of these other fighters that we just went over were minus 300, minus 400, minus 500 inside the distance. To put it in perspective, you have Walker, who is minus 110 to finish in the first round, where Christian Leroy Duncan is barely favored. He's not even favored to finish at all. And he doesn't have takedown upside. So I think that this guy is probably close to a fade at 9,200. The Anders play is only interesting because, again, I wonder what he looks like in a loss. I mean, is he going to somehow get a couple of takedowns? I don't know. I don't think that's really the Anders experience. I think the Anders experience is trying to get him into the clinch more. So, I don't know. I think that Anders is okay as far as that goes, but the problem is that Christian Leroy Duncan is not going to be particularly popular. So you're not going to be getting a lot of leverage on him. Where, as opposed to Urbina, for example, where obviously Medic is going to look really, really good, so you'll get a lot of leverage on it. So I don't think that this fight is particularly appealing from either side. Okay, now we get to like three mid-range fights in a row, or mid-ish range fights in a row, that have um, some pretty poor inside the distance props. Um, the first one being Miles Johns versus Gene Matsumoto. Now, the good thing is that Gene Matsumoto is minus 270. Let's look at his inside the distance line. It's only 8,500. Okay, so from a money line perspective, I gotta pause this a second. Sorry about that. So let's take a look at Gene Matsumoto's inside the distance line here. Now he's only 8,500, so he doesn't need to be that good. But it looks like plus 320, 300. It's just not going to be good enough. And he really doesn't have that great wrestling upside. As a matter of fact, Miles Johns, very tough. It's very, very difficult to get it going wrestling wise against him. And Johns, unfortunately, his inside the distance line is no good. He's really not that great of a wrestler. So I think this fight is another mid-range pass. Okay. Christian Rodriguez versus Andre Fili. Again, you'd love to be able to play this because of this pricing, but you really don't need it. You know what I mean? Like if you can get out of this Brundage McConaughey fight alive, that's really all you need. All right. Then you just need like one of these underdogs to kind of get there. So, I mean, we'll look at this. I mean, C-Rod is, he's usually where fantasy points go to die, honestly, unless he's getting finished like in his last fight. But you look at this, C-Rod inside the distance, probably going to be plus 300, right? I mean, plus 220. It's just not good enough. Not on this card. Not at, I don't know, 8,400? I mean, maybe it is good enough, right? 8,400 inside the distance. Boy, am I going to play this? See, if this was a normal card, I would say, okay, 8,400 plus 220 inside the distance. That looks good. But for an extra 300, you could get to like Medic, it's minus 360 or something. So I'm definitely going to get there in GPPs. Definitely going to get there in 150. And Feely, I think Feely is going to get a little bit too highly owned here. I think I don't know. I think he's going to be, as my friend Magic MMA likes to say, I think he's going to end up being one of like the hipster plays of the week, where I don't know, people are so narrative based and they say, okay, C-Rod, he's great against the prospects, but against the proven guys, he's not as good. So let's go Feely. I don't know about that. That seems just like a recipe for C-Rod to be undervalued here. So I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to be over on C-Rod here. All right. Yasmin Lucindo versus Angela Hill. All right. I mean, women's fight, not a lot of action. I mean, there's action, it'll be volume maybe, but not a lot of inside the distance, plus 600, plus 1,000, whatever. Lucindo might be able to get the wrestling going here. She certainly didn't in her last fight, so I guess that would help her. So I guess Lucindo, 8,300 though. I don't know, between the pricing, the takedown upside, I don't know, maybe not, maybe this isn't so bad. Maybe this isn't so bad. So, okay, I will say I'll take Lucindo as an 8,300, maybe pretty low owned. Angela Hill, is it going to be good enough for 7,900 to win with 75 points? And I said we didn't care too much about the how these underdogs finish their fights, but at 7,900 we are going to care. So I don't think Angela Hill is a particularly good play here. I think if anything, I would play Lucindo. All right, Urseg versus Osborne. Well, Urseg does have a big money line here for only 9,100 at minus 600. But I just don't know about the inside the distance line here. It's minus 150. That's not bad. It's definitely not bad. So we'll consider him again one of these like favorites. Him, Walker, Fernandez, you know. So what do you think about Osborne? So Osborne, okay, the good thing is that if he wins, it's probably going to be like a first round knockout, right? He's taking the fight on very short notice. So if in fact he wins, I imagine he's just going to empty the clip and just somehow get to Urseg. I mean, I think Urseg got knocked out in the first round by Kai Kara France, right? I mean, it's definitely possible. So that's the good news. The bad news is it's not going to happen all too often. I mean, he's a plus 400 underdog, even with the VIG adjusted. We're talking about he wins the fight 20% of the time, 15%. I mean, I guess you probably have to play some of him in 150, but it's not great. And I'll tell you something else. He's definitely not scoring well in a loss. So I think there's a punt you probably want to get to a little bit in 150, but definitely not one of my favorites. And all right, the main event, I mean, here's the unfortunate reality. Or fortune, whatever. I mean, Anthony Hernandez just is a DFS machine. I mean, he in his wins, he just scores over 100 every fight, and he has like 200-point upside. You know what I mean? He's just a DFS like machine. It's the best I could put it. He's Marab of this weight class, and if he wins, you're going to have him. That's it. You know what I mean? So, and he's going to win the fight about what 75% of the time, or 70% of the time. So it's kind of silly for me to say don't play him. He's going to be very, very popular, but what are you going to do? Well, what you can do is play the other side, okay? Because, all right, he's minus 280. That means he wins the fight about 75% of the time. That means, you know what that means? He means he loses the fight 25%. And if he loses the fight 25% of the time, I promise you Delise is going to score in those wins. So you definitely want to play both sides of this. And how much to play depends really on what the rest of your lineups are going to end up looking like. But if you end up getting kind of market weight here, like 72% Hernandez, 28% Delise, I think that's perfectly reasonable. And again, the other thing about the Delise play that makes sense is that Hernandez is going to be 1,000,000,000% owned. So all your Delise wins not only probably score well, but also get incredible leverage over all the Hernandez lineups. So that's pretty good. And the other thing, not to belabor this point, but in losses, I mean, I think Delise is definitely live to score some points. I mean, he can get knockdowns and end up losing. He could get sweeps and end up losing. And just the normal 5-round variance, you could end up getting some points. So I think that this fight is going to be very chalky and probably for good reason. I mean, definitely for good reason. Will it necessarily make the optimal? I mean, I don't know. There's always percent chances of everything in this life, but I find it difficult for this not to be there. Let's put it that way. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. I think this main event is kind of forced. I mean, it's not forced, but you're really asking for trouble if you don't play it. I think this first fight is probably almost not as important, but I think you're probably going to want to play this one. And then I don't know, of these underdogs, I do like the Cachoeira fight. Play both sides of that. I do like Urbina for some reason. Again, well, for the reasons I mentioned. And I would play those. So these first 4 fights, I think these 3 are going to be really big. And then a lot of kind of nonsense in the middle, honestly. And it's pretty much it. Tomorrow, I might come through with a betting breakdown, and I will almost definitely do a lineup construction video at some point before the event starts. Hopefully this helps, and good luck, everybody.